Welcome to the second video in our Getting Started series. If you haven't seen the first one and you're curious about the hub screen, be sure to check that out. But if you're already familiar, if you just don't have any questions, you can skip that one, come straight here. And in this video, we're going to just cover the storyboard. I think we can make a whole video just based on this storyboard. And when you open a project, you might come to a similar screen. Obviously, I've been using this storyboard for testing purposes, so I've got a few levels here, but yours might be somewhat similar where you'd have, some screens. You'd have maybe just one of these levels, and there'd be a lot of wires going around to different screens and so forth. And so we'll talk about all of these. I won't go into depth in all of these. It's not really what this is about. I just want to give you some basic idea of how the storyboard works and what you can do with it. So it's really just organizing your project in your game. So when you launch your game, you're going to see a splash screen. You're going to come to a title screen. And then depending on which button you choose, it's either going to go to one screen or another screen and so forth. And so if I say start a new game, it's going to go to the loading screen for a moment while it's loading that game. And then from here, you can just drag the little output to wherever it is that you want to go next. And you can have new loading screens in between the next level if you want to, or you can just load straight into the next level. It's up to you. So like see here, if we win the level, then we can go straight to that level. Maybe. Oh, next level. That's my bad. There we go. And then next level. Okay. So, that's how you string them together, where you can put like load screens in between them. It just kind of depends on what you're doing. Like if you're loading in the next level and it's a big level, you might want to do a loading screen in between. You can make new levels just by clicking this button right here. That's going to open the terrain generator, and you'll see that there's a video in the HUD screen that talks about the terrain generator, but long and short of it is you can do different biomes, and those biomes are procedurally generated, and you can tweak things to your liking. Just add like more trees or less trees or higher height or lower height. You can mess around with it a little bit and kind of tweak it and make it your own. You could do a height map. So let's suppose you have a height map of some realistic location, like the Grand Canyon, for example. You could port that in and it'll just generate the terrain based on that height map. So a lot of cool things you can do with it. That's all advanced topics, but it gets deeper than just generating a quick little biome. Or you can see that in my case, I'm doing testing, so I don't really need all the trees and hills and everything like that. So I just do an empty level each time. And I'm usually just using a half-kilometer, like the smallest map, just for a quick test or a quick concept or something like that. So, and I encourage you to make a testing project just for that reason, so that you can just spin up a quick wireframe and see how something's going to play or something's going to feel, or how do I use this behavior, things like that. Then you have these screens here. So you can add new screens just by clicking this button and it'll add a new screen. So let's suppose you have the about screen, but you wanted to add some credits for, people that had collaborated with you, or sources from where you got things. You could add a new screen and edit it that way. You can add a new loading screen, like I mentioned before. You can add a new HUD screen. So these are all of the RPG screens, which we'll talk about in just a moment, but just know that these kind of come out of the box and are pre-assembled for you. But you can also add a new HUD screen that's just blank, and you can make it whatever it is that you want. Sometimes you just need a HUD screen that doesn't come pre-configured, and that's what that's for. Then you have add an existing level. So let's suppose you had a level in a different project and you just want to reuse it, for example. You could click add an existing level. What that's going to do is open up a folder where levels are stored. They're called FPMs. .fpm is the extension, and you can just bring in a level from an existing level from somewhere else and use it in any project. And I actually have a video on that, so you can go into more detail if you want to watch that video. Playtests, right? Playing the game. You can check this box if you want to play test as it would be a standalone. So in other words, there are certain behaviors that really only work functionally in a standalone environment. For instance, if you wanted to teleport from one level to the next, it'll tell you, hey, this worked. There'll be like some text on the screen, but in order to really get from one level to the next, you need a standalone. And rather than going through that whole extensive process of making a standalone just to test that one feature, you can just click this box and it'll act like a standalone. Yeah, and then you can do a normal single level or invulnerable single level. So in other words, let's suppose you're testing an aspect like teleport, but you have a bunch of enemies in your level and you don't want to have to hassle and fight your way through to get to that teleport location. You can just choose invulnerable single level, and then you can just walk through it, and they'll be shooting at you, but it won't mean anything. They won't hurt you. And then when you're really ready to do a standalone game, you can click Save Standalone Game, and that'll actually export it as a executable file. So that's the simple version that you see when you open up Max for the first time. This is probably what you're looking at. But then you have this tick box here for View Advanced Settings. And if you cursor over it, it says Show Advanced Storyboard Features. So I'm going to go and click that box. And when you do that, you see you get a whole bunch of other screens that come pre-configured for you. So you have the sound settings screen, you have the controls screen where it tells you like what your physical controls are, your keyboard controls are. You have a pause screen. There's all kinds of other things that come along with it. You also have more buttons here. So let's just make sure I didn't get any new buttons that I skipped over. So add new screen. We got all those taken care of. The only new ones that you see here are add and reset HUD screens. So let's suppose you didn't want these screens here. Then you could just click reset and those go away. Now let's say you accidentally click that or you want to take another look at it, you can just click add RPG screens and it generates them. So those are optional and you can just, get rid of them or bring them back anytime. Maybe you did some work on it, but you don't like it and you want to reset and you don't have to like undo everything manually. That's another quick way to just reset them back to stock and try again. So different ways you can do that. If you want to move around the scene, you just left click and hold. And that's how I'm moving the screen back and forth. I'm just getting a hold of that background and moving it back and forth. You can see where you are in the project. So if you have a really big project, you have this little window down here to kind of tell where you are. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, you can just click around in here too if you just want to jump to a certain location. And then the only other thing I want to point out is, well, there's two things. One, the project is called testing. So if I were to export this out to a standalone, the game is going to be called testing. And currently there is no way to rename that. Be careful with what you're naming your game. It may be, in my case, it was the fact that I created a game. I did a build along series. So again, if you're new here, go check that out too, because we built a whole game together from scratch. But I named it, I think, Maze, just because I didn't have a name. I was going to leave it to the community to name the game for me. And they did. That was great. But then when it came time to rename the game, I was like, well, how do I rename it? And it turns out I couldn't. So what I did with that is I just saved the game project as, and then renamed it. And then it just created a new game project with all the same stuff. It didn't change anything. Just saved it as a new name. And so then I ended up having Maze, and then I also had TKL, which is what I ended up calling it. So then I just got rid of the old project, and that was it. So there are workarounds and ways to do that. Then you have the menu here. This menu is really, really important. You only really see it once you get into the storyboard, like it's not in the hub. But you can see you can create new projects here or open existing projects. These are some of the projects that are already there. So if I wanted to switch over to a different project, there's a kind of a quick way to do that. We have the edit menu, so we can add new levels here. So we already see these buttons over here, but there's also options here. You can play the game or play with invulnerable, so very similar to the buttons over there. Export to standalone, so a lot of the same settings, but this is probably the most important one in the edit dropdown, which is the setting menu. I would highly encourage you to step through this settings screen before you even get started making a game, and just customize this to your liking. Maybe you want, a different interface color, or you want to pick some of these boxes and see what they do. I'm not going to go over every single one of these. All of this stuff is covered in the manual, which I alluded to in the first video. So if you're not sure about that, just go back to the hub screen and you'll find there's a tab for the manual. And all of this stuff is highly detailed in the manual, so there's no need to explain it here. We have the advanced tab. So different advanced settings. If you don't know what something is, I'd probably just leave it alone for now. And then the developer tab. Sometimes there are tick boxes that I've ticked more than a year ago, and I just forget that I even have it enabled, and then I'm talking to somebody and they don't know what I'm talking about, and it's because there's a setting or a tick box that I've ticked that I've enabled that they haven't. So I would really encourage you to go through these and really, play around with them, see what they do, and read up on them if you have more questions. And then the last thing is the help screen. So we have the user manual, which I mentioned before, the guides folder. So there's a number of written guides that are more explicit or more subject oriented. There's a behaviors guide, for example, that talks about all the individual behaviors that are included in Max. You can report an issue. So if you come across some sort of bug, or you come across a feature that doesn't quite, act the way you would expect, you can go to the GitHub page and research it and see if anybody's reported it as a bug. If they have, then you can just chime in and say, hey, yeah, this is my experience of what I observed. Or if it's a new bug, you can post a newer, a new GitHub post and just report that bug. You can also do feature requests. So if you have an idea for a feature and it hasn't already been proposed, it's really important. Don't clutter the GitHub with a bunch of stuff that's already there. But if you have a new idea and you want to propose it, feel free to. New features aren't just immediately added, but they will be ultimately added if they're popular. So that's another really good point, is if you have an idea and you go in there and you research and you see, oh, somebody else had this same idea, don't just say, great, it's been asked for, and walk away. Post something to that GitHub post and say, hey, I want this too. And in addition, here's some other ideas that might make it even more valuable. The more popular something is, the more likely it is to be added. So, be sure to contribute if you have good ideas. This will just bring you back to the hub. And you have the what's new and about. If you click about, for example, you can view the credits for the software itself. And in fact, here I am, Tom from Blood Moon Interactive, for the user manuals, and you can see some of the other contributors to the Max software. So, but that's the storyboard. It's pretty simple once you get the hang of it. You'll be using this a lot. So I would, like I said, encourage you to poke around, try things, click on stuff. You can't really break it necessarily, so just try. Don't worry about it. If you really go, ham, and you do end up breaking it, just make a new project. No big deal. If you enjoyed the video, or if you learned anything new, what I appreciate is if you just click the like button down below. That helps me out a lot. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to click subscribe also. I do a lot of content for GameGuru Max. I do tutorial videos on behaviors, and I do some other videos for just indie game development in general. And lastly, if you'd like a notification for whenever new videos are posted, just click the bell icon and that'll let you know when a new video is ready. I always say I don't really keep a regular schedule. I just post when I have something available. So that's a helpful feature to see when a new video has been posted. But thanks so much for watching all the way through. I always appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. Hey, don't forget there's a written guide for every behavior, including ones I haven't yet covered on this channel. And if you want to learn some more, why don't you check out this video next.